All right. Good evening. That's right. Evening. Doing an evening show tonight, folks. Welcome to another episode of the Liberty Dad Podcast, a discussion on politics and culture. I am your host, DL, America's most objective libertarian. If you're tuning in live, thank you so much for giving me your time this evening. All right. So, what do we got going on tonight? Well, I was thinking to do a show this morning on that viral video of the woman spanking the hell out of her child. And then I thought, hey, wait a minute. So I reached out to a friend of mine, Tyler, and I was like, hey man, you're a practicing family law attorney. Would you be willing to come on the show and we can have a chat? Not only, just kind of get his legal perspective on this issue in as much as we can, obviously, but then also he's been on the show before because he is also a dad. And so I figured this would be a great opportunity to have two dads kind of discuss this. We can discuss kind of like the legal elements of that, and then also discuss it from the perspective of just two dads. And maybe we'll even throw in like two libertarian dads in specific. So with no further ado, let's bring Tyler on. Tyler, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. So let's dive into this. So first and foremost, hopefully I think you'll be all right with it. I want to tell people I'm going to play the video just in case somebody hasn't seen it. I got a 45-second clip video. I will give you fair warning, folks. This video is graphic, or you might find it disturbing. Okay, it does show a parent beating, in my opinion, beating on their child. That we'll talk about that later. But they are at least spanking their child repeatedly, and they're using profanity. So just giving you a fair warning. So let's get that up. And let's see. There we are. Here's the video. Let's play it.
No, you're not fucking sorry. Because if you were fucking sorry, you would do this stupid shit to begin with. You would make extra work on everybody else in this house because you won't clean up after yourself. Because you don't do what you're supposed to do. Do you understand me? Ow, 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 everybody else will say, fucking please make sure your goddamn work a while ago. And she run off down at the fucking neighbor's house. No.
All right. So that was enough of that. Let's. All right.
I'm only
So-
laughing because it's disturbing to some extent. And someone asked if this is the attorney that handled the Tower Gang divorce. Yeah, yes, it is.
So I'm not a squeamish guy, but we'll talk about it here in a little bit. Our perspectives as dads. I definitely have changed my perspective on parenting after having become a parent.
Mm.
But first and foremost, I'd like to break this up into two parts.
Mm.
The legal implications or the legal aspect, what we can talk, what you can say regarding the legality and the implications for that. And then we can shift into, okay, as fathers, husbands, just men, what's our personal take on this? So from a legal perspective, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are 3 different states involved here. You're out of California. I'm out of Florida. This event happened in Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is that the laws can vary pretty significantly when it comes to things like child abuse. Is that correct?
So, possibly. I
Okay.
looked at the Alabama law, and it's not too vastly different than California, actually. So
Okay.
I think some of it has to do with culture and how the laws might be implemented around there. So
Gotcha. Or enforced.
yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So diving in the legal perspective, you're a family law attorney.
Correct.
I presume that you've come across cases very much like this. What's your legal take here? Because you've got we don't know if the dad this is something that he agrees with. At least not that I've seen. Supposedly he's rushing home from his work trip. What's your take legally speaking, in as much as you can say?
So I looked into this a little bit. Maybe you can answer me a few questions. Are they married?
I didn't see that. I saw some references to husband, but nothing that was clear. So I'm not sure.
And the reason I ask that is because it's always where drinking, as an example, in your house, right? You and your wife have a glass of wine, no big deal. But now the state's involved in your case. You're no longer married, and she's going to bring up the fact that you have a glass of wine with the kids, and the state may tell you you can't do that, right? Or they can put provisions on what you can do, not so much the kid. So, this is one of those things. Do you have an agreement? We see this quite often where do the parents, do they want corporal punishment? One may be okay, one may not. And the state, at least in California, even if it's legal, they will just say no corporal punishment. It's an easy drop off to just order both parents. You're not going to be doing that. I've had orders like that for clients, and they still kind of do some spanking here and there. And the courts kind of like rolls their eyes. Hey, let's not do that. Because there is a big difference in, what would be acceptable corporal punishment and then abuse. So part of it, what you have in California, and it's going to be in this lady's case too, there's almost 3 different aspects. There's a family court case, maybe you have a custody issue. There is also a restraining order, domestic violence restraining order that can be against the kid. Now, a child, a minor, you don't necessarily get another adult that could come in there. They have to do a guardian ad litem or something like that to have the kid actually have this abuse accusation against the mom. That's a civil issue. But then there's a criminal, or where child welfare services comes in, and they're going to prosecute, and they're going to take this. This lady sounds like it's a criminal. Someone said, I think one of the brothers took the video and sent it to another brother that doesn't live there anymore, and he made it public. So kind of like ratting out mom. So now there's going to be a criminal issue, and child welfare services or whatnot, whatever they call it, there is going to probably come in and have some say over where the placement of the child is. So those are kind of all your different aspects of what's going on here. If dad, they're not married, he's going to use this against mom for custody. At least he should. And I say that should because I've had cases where the parties are kind of separated and there's abuse, and juvenile or child welfare services comes in, and they have told one of the parents, if you allow this to continue, you're going to be negligent as a parent because you can't let abuse continue to happen. So I had a client where she's like, I need to file for divorce. to make sure that there's a separation that shows that I'm serious of like protecting the kids, against the dad. So there's all these little things jumbled in there. And anyway, I don't know if that helped or handled any of that for you.
Gotcha. So a lot of it's going to hinge on how on board dad is with this, and then whether or not they're married, right? Did I understand that correctly?
Well, some of that can be. It looks like the look. You have different tiers of justice in a sense, which is criminal typically takes precedent over the civil side. So, as an example, if you have a restraining order that's been pushed by the DA and they have a protective order, that it takes precedent over any civil family court restraining order. It's a higher standard that you have to meet beyond a reasonable doubt, which is preponderance of the evidence in the civil court. So if this lady is getting arrested, something's going to happen there. Child Welfare Services, juvenile court's going to come in and they're going to do a placement issue. If mom and dad are together, they're going to have to work together to try to get these kids back. Maybe with dad. If they're not together, dad may be using it as a custody ploy against mom. Maybe he doesn't want custody. I don't know. I don't know what that situation is, but it looks like to me the whole criminal side is going to take precedent. And another reason why is because if you have a civil case issue and you have a criminal and you try to do something in the civil court, it can be used against you in criminal. So a lot of that will just be stayed if they have custody issues. So those are kind of your procedural problems that you have here. But I think the criminal side is just going to take precedent and the DA is going to end up doing what it has. And then, Child Welfare Services or whatever juvenile court's going to handle the placement.
Gotcha. Some of the things that I've read were pointing out that the fact that one child felt the need to videotape it, then sent it to a child that's no longer living there.
Yep.
That child is the one that basically reported it or at least publicized it. That those two things are actually going to go against the mother because that kind of suggests that there was problems. And I believe that I read that the oldest brother or the oldest sibling, I'm not sure if I think it was a brother, had come out and said, "This is what I grew up with." And so now you've got at least one sibling who's saying, "This isn't a one-time thing. This is how I grew up before I left the house." So, is there any situation that you see this woman being reunited? I guess I don't know if that's the right word with her child or her children.
Absolutely. It's going to happen. To terminate a parent's rights is a very difficult prospect, you can imagine. And it should be, because oftentimes there's bad accusations, or you get, kids just saying stuff. So I do step parent adoptions as an example. And if the biological father, just throwing that out there, because this is what I did as well, biological father is not in the picture and the stepdad now wants to adopt the child, you've got to terminate the rights of the other parent first. And that's no small feat. You've got a lot of rights as a parent. So fundamental rights, as we say, as well, constitutional. So that has to, so she's not going to necessarily, I don't know if you know who Nick Rekieta is, famous law tuber. Yeah. Cocaine in his child's hair. Kids are back with them. So you can overcome this. It just takes time. And I always tell clients that as well, which is this, one parent restraining orders or whatnot, you can work your way through this. You can overcome these presumptions. And I believe that's what they would have as well there, which is domestic violence or whatnot. Now you're looking at custody and placement. There's a presumption a parent that abuses a child should not have parental rights, or not rights, but, visitation. And that can be overcome, training, education, classes, whatnot, maybe supervised, and then it goes from there. So yes, she will. I presume, especially just seeing this, there's much worse that's happened, and parents still are in their kids' lives.
Right. How common is this level of corporal punishment that you have seen? Like fairly, or is this pretty high up there? And what do you got?
I don't necessarily see it. You hear about it. Not everyone's filming. This lady is not, I would just say she didn't do her job, right? Which is hide it. I think it's what George Lopez used to talk about, how Mexicans are much better at hiding their punches in the parking lot or something. He's a comedian. Right. And so this lady, and matter of fact, I think he was talking about white women and not doing this very well. All jokes aside, I've seen a few things, but it's mostly just testimony, and then kids being another part of her problem is, like you said, adult son or child that's not in the house making claims. Sorry about the dog. And also having a child that's 12 years old being able to express to the court or whomever, the kind of abuse that the child's their best advocate at this point.
Gotcha. Okay. And then if, presuming that the mother is reunited with the children, is the likelihood that things get better for the child good or bad based on the process that has to happen? In other words, does the process help insulate against further incidents or not so much?
So I don't know what the deal is with that in Alabama, but I would imagine, they have social services, and that's child welfare services. They're going to, when they place this, they're going to have probably checking in. They're probably going to be, once again, this is libertarian stuff for us, right? And you don't want the state involved. But as soon as you're doing something and the state is involved, now they're intrusive, and you've kind of done something to allow them in your life at this point, which she's done. She's been arrested, and they are going to, from the mandates from Alabama's Constitution, they're going to try to protect the child. And that could be, and she may be on probation a while, right? And if that's the case, the police don't need a warrant to come over and check and see how you're doing. You've lost that right when you're on probation or in parole. So I think they're going, I would imagine that they have something to check in to make sure mom's, probably supervised visits for a while, if she has that even. But there's going to be, some stepping stones. This is too public of an incident.
Right.
She was arrested. The police, they're not taking this like, oh, we're just the good old people back here in Alabama. I had to look up to see where this was at, because I'm like, Alabama? I mean, you have your stereotypes and all. But this is stuff that can take place. This is what's fascinating about abuse is it's not always economic. It's not always racial. It's not always regional. It could be anybody, anywhere. I've seen some of the worst stuff with completely educated, high income people in nice areas here in California, right? So it can be anywhere.
Gotcha. And then so she got fired.
Yeah.
This just kind of, in my opinion, at least adds fuel to the fire when it comes to the court of public opinion. I don't know how much this matters to the court, the actual real courts, but people were like, wait a minute, she was supposedly the teacher of the year at a Christian school, and they have promptly fired her, which I agree with. Because if I was sending my child there, and I knew that, and I saw that video, and I was like, that's one of the teachers teaching my kid? Absolutely not. So I can easily imagine why the school would have, on top of any reasons that they may have, for moral transgressions there. But so she's now without a job, and she's likely to be on probation for some amount of time. I assume that's going to put a hurting on their economic situation. How will that impact the case, or does it not really impact anything? Like, now that she's fired and she has less income, will the state look at it and go, well, you don't even have the means to raise your kids now, or like, how does that play out?
I'm not sure in Alabama, but in California, economics is prohibited from the conversation for custody. So you definitely have to distinguish between those two. The only time you're looking at like a person in a lower income issue is like, and it's typically where new divorce or breakup, and one of the parties is, they've moved out of the same house, so they're sleeping on couches at the other parties, like grandparents, and they're like, this child doesn't even have a place to stay, and if you try to say because he doesn't have a job, the judge is going to, hey, let's not talk about that. It's really about the living environment, right? Is that dad's living in a car? Well, the child's not going to be, given to him for custody. So I'm assuming that, and partly because all these states are under Title 4D of the Social Security Act. I don't know if you've ever talked about that insanity. So Department of Child Support Services throughout the nation, right? They all get money, and it's from this Title 4D of the Social Security Act. It's like 70 cents on a dollar for just enforcing stuff. Anyway, I don't have to get into all that, but what I'm saying is there's regulations for support and whatnot. So almost all states would have something like this, which is you don't get to talk about the impact, the social, economical, their income level impact on the children, unless that parent just really can't take care of the child, which is then until they get better or get a place, then they're going to be fine. So I hope does that explain it? I mean, my point is economics isn't going to come into this. I mean, it can, but not specifically.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I was just curious because I always wonder, I know that sometimes we hear about cases where they throw the book at them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're looking for any and everything that they can get you with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just wondering if that's the case here where, right now the outrage is pretty high publicly. So I think that helps motivate the people in the justice system to do something, to maybe act more tough, right? And so I'm just kind of curious, like, what kind of things based on the public outcry might we see or hear about in this case that you might not have heard about if it wasn't so public?
Yeah, and you can't even divorce yourself from a judge thinking about the public impact. I mean, back to OJ and Judge Ito. Just recently, Comey Barrett from on the Supreme Court, they denied Kim Davis overturning Obergefell, basically, gay marriage situation. And even her had made some comment about unwinding the ramifications. Well, a judge shouldn't be thinking about the ramifications of what we've done. This is just what's the law and what we do. So my point is, it affects all judges. They think about that. There's only so much you should be able to do. And you say throw the book. I mean, if you ever want to talk about men's rights stuff, I've got a lot of problems with some of the men behavior on that spectrum. Mm-hmm. I'm not like some of these, feminists. All I'm saying is men just don't anticipate litigation the way women do. So they go into it. They maybe don't understand. The wife has got details up the yin yang and all the evidence. And then they come out and things didn't go their way. And so then it's the system's fault. And then they're a victim. And then they don't try because it's the system just against you. All these men's rights are telling you all the time. So anyway, I've got a few little problems with that. But throwing the book at her, I mean, does she deserve it? Maybe.
Gotcha. Okay. And I know there's a limitation on what we can talk about in terms of the legal implication here. I mean, you're not specifically familiar with all the details of the case. And of course, if you were, then we probably couldn't be talking about it.
Yeah.
But is there anything that I'm not thinking of? Because I'm not a lawyer, guys. I know it may sound strange to people because I do bill reviews all the time. I'm just a lay guy that reads. Is there anything that I am missing, from this that you can talk about, from the legal aspect?
First of all, I want to talk about your bill reading stuff. So I've said this about Lee, Brian McClanahan. You don't have to be an attorney to read and comprehend these kind of things. There's so many attorneys out there that, read Supreme Court cases. They don't know what the heck you're talking about. You do a great job. And so, the more you read that, the more you're just like a law student where you've read it and you've understand it more and more. So you do a good job. I just wanted to give you props on that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. But I did look up because I started to ask some questions to myself last night. One, is corporal punishment legal in Alabama? Okay. Can we even, because that's what she's going to claim, I imagine. And it is. So, but here's it's Alabama Code 1975, section 13A-3-24. And it's use of force by persons with parental, custodial, or special responsibilities. And we can break all this out, but I'll just read first section here. A parent, guardian, or other person responsible for the care and supervision of a minor or an incompetent person, and a teacher of other person responsible for the care or supervision of a minor for a special purpose may use reasonable and appropriate physical force upon the minor or incompetent person when and to the extent that she reasonably believes it is necessary and appropriate to maintain discipline or to promote the welfare of the minor or incompetent person. So with that in mind, reasonable care.
Yep.
A parent can do this. Reasonable and appropriate physical force. Okay. And necessary to maintain discipline. or to promote the welfare. So we're watching this, this lady spank her child with a belt. Okay. There's a few things I could talk about, but what really got me first, I'm like, okay, we're drawing the line here. She's a little excessive. She's a left-hander. I don't know if that anyway, she's beating on this kid, what they say, 22 times in 14 seconds with a belt. It's not, he's got pants on. Okay. And then she grabs him by the hair and she pulls him down, and then she grabs him, keeps hold and pulls him up. That to me is where it's a no-brainer. I mean, there's no reasonable reason to do this. It's a 12-year-old. You can communicate with him. You can have a conversation. I don't think he's an incompetent person. So that to me is what really took it over the line. And then you mix it in. I just say this as if you want to, we can move off the legal in a little bit. My point there is I was a child who had corporal punishment. I got spanked twice in school because I went to a Christian school, 3rd and 7th grade. Okay. Pretty harsh by men. I did use corporal punishment against my kids, and I backed off, and I really wish I had never done that, because when she did one thing here that really showed me the problem, which is, and I don't remember ever getting spanked by, my dad didn't, but my mom did. That was not, or me even doing it myself, which was not full of emotion. This lady was super angry, and it's like, that is not the appropriate time to be doing, this discipline. And once you calm down, you're just not going to spank the child. Right. So anyway, what do you think about the reasonable care, duty, and all that to maintain discipline?
So when I read bills, one of the things that I have observed is that some words matter a lot.
Yeah.
Maybe all of them do, but I think some of them, when you say reasonable, what does that mean? Reasonable to whom? Reasonable to Tyler, reasonable to DL. We're two entirely different peoples. I saw people online defending this woman and saying, man, that was my childhood and I'm fine. Right. Like, and there's always somebody, you never know if that's just a troll or some Russian bot or whatever. But I've talked to real people who do believe that there is some level of spanking that is reasonable. And then I've talked to other people who are like, there is no level of spanking that is reasonable, and people somewhere in between. Right. So I think those words are interesting. And then there was like 3 or 4 different words in there that basically had that same issue with me. It was like, I think it was appropriateness. Like, what does that mean? What constitutes appropriate? And I think what people, maybe not in this particular case, because I think it's pretty widespread that people find this offensive. But I think in regular spanking cases, there's the argument of, well, this was appropriate. I needed to, right? Like, my child was running around throwing stuff and could have got hurt and hitting the dog. I needed to smack them, right? And other people might say, well, no, you just, you do something else. So there's always going to be this debate of reasonable appropriateness and some of the other words that I don't recall off the top of my head. How, and maybe we can make this the last law question. We'll shift over to the dad side of it here. But when there's a statute like that, how are these words, how do they play out in these kind of cases? Like, I assume with something as common as spanking, there's some level of already understood meaning, or is that not so?
Now, this is the difficult part of this. I mean, even Alabama, most states, if you're going to place a child with one of the parents, it's called the best interests of the child standard. Okay, well, what is that? I mean, but that's what the standard is almost in every single state. So you're like, well, I got to figure out what this best interest of the child standard is. Reasonable, appropriate, necessary, appropriate, maintain, you're right. There's some trigger words there. And so you are going to have to, it's the reasonable person standard. If you're looking at negligence as an example, you're just driving down the road and you do something, it's, reasonable person. Now there's other things, like if you're a doctor, you have a duty of care that's specific to being a doctor that's above someone else. So but the main idea is a reasonable person standard. Looks like what you're trying to do here. I don't know that she was in a reasonable state of mind. Okay. That could be part of the problem, that you can see the anger. And I would be drawing those things out. You would say 22 spanks. Is that really get the idea that you're supposed to do this? Cursing, grabbing the hair. I mean, I think this is a no-brainer.
Spanks with a belt.
Pardon?
Right. 'Cause it spanks with the belt.
With a belt, yeah.
Because we're not talking about just your hand.
Just yeah, exactly is the case, which is going to be more brutal in a sense. But you're right. You're going to have to make all these little arguments and say a lot of things like it's not reasonable. This is, but throwing you into the world of, and if you want to be a good amateur attorney, you do things like this. It's like you make the statement, it's not reasonable, and then you say because. And then you fill in some evidence because she hit him 22 times in 14 seconds. She grabbed his hair. She was over emotional. She was cursing at him multiple times. Those are all the things that kind of fill in the answers. So you're not just a declarative statement that you see a lot of people do online or attorneys as well. So, yeah.
So let's dive into the dad portion. So we're going to put away the legal aspect. We're going to talk as dads. We can even bring our own libertarian perspectives in this because I know that libertarians sharply differ, generally speaking, from, say, conservatives on the matter of spanking. I don't know that I actually know any libertarian parents who advocate for spanking. But I know plenty of conservative ones that do, and I'm not dogging them. I'm just saying like there's a distinct difference here. So I saw this little chart, and I take issue with it. And I would like to get your perspective. Let me put it up on the screen here. Let's see. There we go. All right. So, and let's see. Can I move I can't move us out of the way. Let me see if I can't adjust this just a little bit, maybe, so that we can see it better. I don't know. All right, so I'll have to just read it to you guys. So it says, should I strike my child? A comprehensive flow chart. And it starts off with, are they old enough to understand reason? You have yes or no. The yes path goes down and then it asks, then use then use reason. Then it goes on and it says, stop hitting your child, a-hole. And then the no path, if your child does not understand reason, it goes and it says, then they're not old enough to understand the reason you're striking them. And then it leads to that final conclusion, stop hitting your child, a-hole. What's your take on this? Because I actually have some disagreements with it.
Well, I look, this comes across to me more of a meme rather than a flow chart. And reason is because you're an asshole, right? That's kind of the conclusion there. You're not doing anybody any favors by starting off. It's like I don't know if you saw the Dave Smith Zulu thing, and they like it or not, he starts off with Dave Smith is poison. I'm like, okay, well, you've put the conclusion right up here up front for me. I don't know what to think of the rest of it. So yeah, there's some problems I have with that. I don't know if you want to pop that up again so I could take a look here.
Yeah,
if there's anything.
I think I'm limited on moving around the screen.
Are they old enough to understand? I mean, I like that first part, and I get it, because I did some things where you grab your kids are making noise and you're just like, you can't make noise right now, and you grab their leg a little too tight, and then what do? They scream louder. So those are the kind of things that I had done. Yeah. Anyway, what do you have a disagreement with on this? And what's your philosophy with punishing kids?
And so generally, I oppose the idea of spanking, but it is not entirely off the table for me. I'll get to that part in a minute. Just for anybody that's watching, just know that the majority of the time, I think that spanking is avoidable. Possibly all the time, possibly.
How old is your son?
My son is 6.
Okay.
And so for this chart that we've got, I think that there are times when your child doesn't necessarily understand reason, but they're not in a place to be reasoned with, but you still can communicate that something upsets you. So let me give you an example that I think will make sense, help this make sense. Imagine you have a child, they're pulling the dog's tail. Now you're not watching, so you can't say, hey, Johnny, stop pulling the dog's tail. You can't go intervene. They're maybe in a different room. It sounds like they're playing. You're not too worried about it. And then the child is pulling the dog's tail. The dog doesn't like it. And then eventually maybe the dog just kind of snaps at the child and the child stops pulling the dog's tail. Did the dog reason with them? How is it the child understood if they were not able to be reasoned with, but they still understood, hey, something wasn't right here. Now, do they understand the details? Do they understand like the dog was angry? I shouldn't have pulled the tail. It probably hurt them. I doubt all that. But I think there are times where the idea of reason just isn't a good argument. It's not a good way to present not spanking. So you mentioned Dave Smith, actually, and funny enough, I think he made an interesting argument a long time ago that I think actually works better. He said, if you told the world that you hit your spouse like you hit your child, you like your child told a lie, you gave him a spanking. Your wife, whatever, and then you spanked her not in a healthy, intimate way, right? Like you spanked her out of anger or something like
Yeah,
that. If you told
that's
people
healthy.
that, people would be like, they would be like horrified that you hit your wife. But a lot of people would not. They'd be like, "Oh yeah, spare the rod, spoil the child. You gotta spank them sometimes, right?" And he made the point. He said, "Your child is actually far more defenseless than your spouse." Now,
Sure.
for most men, they can overpower their spouse, their female spouse. They can overpower them. Not always. There are some women out there that are pretty tough. I have some friends that I would not want to cross paths with. Some of my female friends that they would lay me out, right? So, but the point here being, I thought that was a very interesting argument and a better way to encourage people to not spank and to say, hey, look, you wouldn't hit your wife that, under those circumstances. And your wife is far more capable if you're out of line in defending herself, whereas your child is not. My son is 6. He's like 3 foot tall. He weighs like 50 pounds. I'm not exactly a huge guy myself, but I certainly have the physical advantage over him. So if I'm overdoing it, he's helpless. Just like the child we watched. He was completely helpless. I don't think there was anything that he was 12, right? My son's 6. So I think that's actually a better argument. What do you think?
Let's go back to some of this with the kid. So the dog, right?
Mhm.
Or think of it like a stove, right?
Mhm.
A stove's not reasoning with you either. It's just happening. So, but there are some things that you need to learn in life. So you make some points there, but there's still a little bit like, I don't know, it's a little bit problematic, even using that comparison, because these are animals don't reason the way we do.
Mhm.
And you can't just spank your child. See, the dog has a direct relationship to the problem, right? Or the stove. It's like I touch stove, hot, I'm done. Where me spanking may not always correlate with exactly what it is. Now you're putting a negative connotation with a parent, not necessarily from the action. So I do have some weird, maybe that's not quite what we're looking at there. What was the other part of that question?
I was just talking about, like, I think a better way to argue against the idea of spanking is to frame it in the context of, you wouldn't do this to your spouse who is an adult, who's physically capable of at least saying, hey, you're going too far, which would be the moment you touch them. But they could defend themselves. Like my wife could, if for some crazy reason I became abusive, she has the ability to at least try and defend herself, whereas my son has like zero ability compared to me.
And I'm not defending corporal punishment at all, but
Right.
let's just walk this through. Your child is still developing. Your child is still learning. Once again, it's that dog, it's the stove. Your wife, hopefully, is not still, her mind is still not developing. She's already there. She's a grown adult with agency. So you're trying to import some life decisions and onto your child. Maybe that's the difference there. I don't know, but I think Dave's point, he's been very, he's convinced me. Now, once again, my youngest is 19. Okay. So I got 19, 21, 22, and 25. So I'm not spanking any of these kids.
Right.
My discipline has changed drastically, in the last 10 years, even how you deal with this stuff. So, but I look back and it just shocks me to see this lady here doing this. The reality of every time I did that or I had that done to me, it was you have anger and you're emotional, and that is the worst time to be doing this kind of stuff because it can go over the top.
Right.
So
yeah, absolutely. And I try. I guess I kind of ride the line a little bit, and part of it is. I've had arguments. I've actually had fallouts with people over this very topic. My mother was abused in a way that would make what we saw a few moments ago look like a night out at Disney.
Yeah.
Okay. She's got some pretty horrific stories.
Yeah.
I was spanked growing up, but my level of spanking, the punishment that I received was far less than the kid that we watched in the video. And way far removed from what my mom experienced. Like her position was like, she believed in spanking, but she was like, there is a point where even spanking is too far. And so she was like, I'm going to break this cycle of abuse. And I think she did a wonderful job of that. So I get a little defensive because I'm like, well, many people grow up and have phenomenal relationships with their parents,
Yeah.
despite the fact that they were spanked. When my mom passed away in 2016, it crushed me.
Hmm.
It just crushed me, because I was hoping to have, many more years left. She died at 59. And so I will become defensive, because if somebody says any level of spanking is abuse, always abuse, no matter what, you're telling me what my experience with my mother was, contrary to how I perceived it. You're also doing that for many other people. I'm not so sure that's actually a good idea, nor is it the way to kind of change things when it comes to how children are disciplined, how society views it. So that's kind of where I come from. And then we can talk about like some of the more details of like, I'm curious about your change, and if you're willing, where you were, where you got to, and what led you to make that change.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I'll talk about my parents too. My dad's a big guy, like 6'2". They're still alive. They're like, what, 83, 84? Still healthy. My mom, she came up really strict life, growing up. Her dad, strong German, probably hit her. I don't know. I'm assuming. So she was the disciplinarian as far as spanking. My dad never did. It was always a threat of, when your dad gets home, he's getting it. And I'm like, oh shit. But I don't ever remember him spanking me. But the point is, it's, at some point, I think it was probably at that kid's age too, I started reaching back and grabbing whatever she was using to spank me. And then we're having a hand struggle. And then then she's like, well, you don't get to watch TV. And I was like, hit me. I want to watch TV. So once again, just like you, I love my mom. I don't ever think back of that and go and have like, if it wasn't for this, I would be, whatever. It's just like that's never the case. Now with my own life, my kids, 8 and 4, I'm getting a divorce. Okay. And my son, he was the oldest. He was a little, he did not take this very well. So it was some difficulty with parenting for both of us. Mm-hmm. And we work good together, but, child's just a little bit ornery. And I remember, discipline in the car, like he's doing something and I'm like reaching back and, swatting his legs and stuff. And I was emotional. And that was like one of the last times I really did something, because I felt myself getting kind of out of control with this. And that's what kind of made me make some changes. Like we're going to have, and then there were some other things where we were going through some counseling with him. And does he have ADHD? Is there some other things like, no, he's doing fine. But the counselor's like, maybe it's a confidence issue. So what came about with that is just you're telling this child basically at different points of doing normal things that every kid just should do. You're like, hey, good job with that. And I noticed a big change in him of just like, giving him positive feedback all the time when he deserved it. And he liked that. It's kind of like, we're taking a dog to training tonight. And I'm sorry to compare my son, who's a fantastic person, to dog training. But, they do something, you reward him with a treat. Right. And he was in that mindset at the time. And so, I do, really thank my ex-wife for both of us trying to get through this time. But that did change me because I did not like how I was feeling about it. And it didn't help him at all. He's getting past this. So the younger one, she just never really got much discipline in that sense. And we just figured out some other things to do that, what is really important for this person. And then you kind of, deduct time on the computer or whatever it is. Right. That did much better for me. So, you're in the thick of it. You're like in that middle spot right now. So just one child, is that correct?
Yeah, just one.
Maybe that makes a difference. There were 4 of them at one point. So
as I got lucky, he seems to have turned out to be a goody two shoe, unlike his daddy. Okay. Because I was a hell raiser.
Yeah.
Okay. Like when people are like, "Oh, your mom spanked you," I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm pretty sure."
Yeah. No, trust me. Yeah.
So because like people have no idea. Like my mom couldn't keep a babysitter. Like it was rough. Like so it's interesting. Like initially, if you had asked me 20 years ago, you said, DL, should parents spank their kid? I'd be like, yeah, spare the rod, spoil the child, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah,
yeah, yeah,
all that kind of stuff. You know, you don't want them to grow up, be a criminal, et cetera, et cetera, et
yeah,
cetera. And today I look at it and I go, now that I'm a parent, I started out where I was more willing to do it, but also still restrained on when, because I was like, one of the things that I tried to do, and I think this has been so value add to me, is I just tried to imagine as many things as that I could that I would expect him to do. So the easy example that I always love using is drawing on the wall. And so I'm like, drawing on the wall is normal. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what you want them to do, but it is normal. And so, like, when I mean normal, I mean, if I just go randomly grab any parent in the United States and ask them or say to them, my child drew on the walls today, my 6-year-old drew on the wall, they're going to be like, yeah, they do that. Right. Like, nobody's going to be surprised. Right. That's what I mean by normal. Like, you know, it's just very common. And when I set those expectations, now I don't have to get mad about that. Right. I'm not angry about it. I'm not like, oh no, I can't believe you drew on my walls. Why, you need a whooping right now because I'm so angry. I was like, all right, here's your towel, or here's your paintbrush. You know, you got to repaint the wall, whatever. You know, like looks nice, but we're painting over it now.
yeah. Well, on that, I just want to kind of reiterate because it made me sound like I had some sort of liberal thing with my, you know, pampering
You are
my
in
son.
California. You are in California.
Yeah. But I would just say that's not, he's definitely not, none of my kids turned out that way. Right. They're kind of, I think we talked about when I talked to you the first time was I used to think that I was raising leaders, and now I realize I'm raising thought criminals. You know, their thoughts are not like a lot of people, which I'm very proud of, even though I had to go through this, you know, massage area with my son of trying to take care of his feelings.
Right. Right. And so initially my rule of thumb was, because I was right about the time that I had a child, I was also coming in and learning about libertarianism and getting more acquainted with it. And so I started getting hit with the ideas of like peaceful parenting and stuff like that. And so I started like, okay, this seems, you know, this seems like a good thing. Like, if you can not hit your kid, why wouldn't you? Right. Like, it's kind of that's my question that I generally ask when I talk to people about it. I say, if you know, what's the reason that people hit their kids? Most of the time, it's because they believe by hitting the child for some unwanted action, that will help ensure that the child grows up to be a healthy, productive member of society that doesn't cause too much trouble, right? That's generally the aim.
Yeah.
That's why people would normally do it. So my question is like, well, if you can raise your child to become a public, productive member of society who doesn't steal or harm from other people, and you can do that without spanking, shouldn't you? Like, you know, like, because I don't want to hit my kid,
Yeah.
you know,
Sometimes I did, let me tell you.
yeah, I feel you on that. But I mean, in general, like, I mean, there's always that moment where you're angry and you want to slug somebody, but like, I also don't even like yelling at him. Now I will yell at him, like, sometimes and he doesn't need it. Like, again, he's a goody two shoe for the most part. He gets in 6-year-old trouble from time to time, but he's generally pretty well behaved. Like, he's so
It's
well
going to be
behaved.
trouble in his teenage years. That's what the scenario is.
Maybe that's what maybe we're getting it on easy mode right now, because like right now, people will compliment him. They'll be like, man, he's such a pleasure to be around. He's so great. He's thoughtful. He's kind. He's like, and I'm like, are y'all making this up or what? Like, is like, but he's a really, really good kid. So we've lucked out so far, knock on wood here, that we continue. So that's just kind of where I come from, you know, and then as I go along, and perhaps some of it's age. I also am 47, you know, so like I'm getting toward that age where you could almost be a grandpa if you had timed it correctly.
Yeah.
And so some people have pointed out, they're like, well, because you had a child when you're older, you have a different perspective already about the world that you didn't have when you were, say, 27. So do you think that any of that played a role, your age?
Yeah, perhaps, because how old was I when my son was born? Like 29.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, I was younger. I mean, I'm 54 now. So could be, you know, you're still trying to figure stuff out. You know, and perhaps your relationship. I mean, you know, my wife now, we've been together, married 13 years in combined families. And I adopted her 2 kids. And, you know, when it was tough, that's some tough things, but it was also like, just the way she is as a human being,
Mm-hmm.
it calmed me down. Right. And it made me better too. So, and you're fighting your way through life. Sometimes, you're getting married and maybe like for me, I abdicated. I gave up some of my manly responsibilities just in the first marriage for whatever reason. She's taking care of it, and next thing you know, you're just kind of it's chaos in the house too. So, right. And look, your kid, I'm sure he's going to be great. Even though he's wonderful now. I made a joke about, your teenage years, but I just imagine, when your kid is fun and you do a lot of stuff together, mm-hmm. It's just this. I mean, when I was, my wife, my first wife she was pregnant, and I had an uncle. It's like, oh, you excited about, having a kid? And my first thought was like, yeah, I've loved growing up. I had great parents, I was enjoying, and I want to perpetuate that. So, yeah, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, it's fun to joke about and say, who knows what's going to happen? Maybe he'll be a teenage rebel, and we'll have maybe that's when he'll start adopting some of daddy. Son, if you're watching this, let me just tell you, do not follow daddy's path. I'm telling you, we'll be in a lot of trouble.
Let's look at this last comment here. I think this is what it is. I think spanking is to draw an immediate stoppage to the undesired behavior while teaching actions have consequences. I mean, I know that's very important. And I've talked about this with teenagers, suicide as an example that you get problematic, where a child goes through like a breakup and they don't understand that you will get over it and that you'll find someone else and that life has cycles like this. But it's these making decisions and then finding out these consequences for them. Now, spanking, I'm saying this in a realm of, financial, just decisions with friends at school. Everything can have consequences. And if you protect your kid too much, mm-hmm. right, then they don't always understand the ramifications of their own, decisions. And right. I think for me, we've really been able to do that, range-free kids type of thing. And they're all very good. They're working, going to school or graduated. And so that's been an important part. And, maybe this has something to do with it. I think that you have to really ride the edge, though, because with the picture we just saw with the lady, that's the video. That's not where you want to end up. I tell people all the time when they're getting divorced, sometimes they're still in the house and it's like, okay, until we figure this stuff out, you're still in the same house with each other. But as we talked about domestic violence restraining orders, next thing you know, there's emotions involved. And next thing you know, the cops are coming, whether it's a valid reason or not. And so, emotions get involved. Maybe don't put yourself in those kind of positions. So that's the concern I would have with spanking if it was still me going forward.
Right. And to address the comment here, I think that's how most people view spanking.
Yeah.
Right. Like either what I said earlier, where it was like, hey, we want to make sure our child grows up to be a productive member of society, or, hey, there's this immediate need to stop this behavior, right? Like, for instance, if we go back to the dog pulling, not the dog pulling, but the child pulling the dog's tail. Well, if the dog is starting to growl or whatever, some parents might say, hey, I need to give them a quick swat on the butt so they know, stop doing this before the dog turns around and bites them, right? Because then we're going to have a catastrophe that we have to deal with. That's going to add just, massive more problems that we have to deal with. And so I can understand when it's like the choice seems to be between potentially getting bit by a dog or getting a spanking, especially if it's a controlled spanking. Like what we saw was clearly out of control.
Yeah.
Like I think it's pretty well accepted that it was out of control. Same thing. And I usually use the argument like, hey, I would rather give my son a spanking to make sure that he doesn't run into the street than to try to, then to have to deal with the ramifications of if he does run into a street.
Yeah.
Right? Because that could be the end of my son. Now, luckily for us, because maybe it's just the way, maybe we got blessed with good cards. I don't know, or a good card, I guess. He's been very easy. He's like, I'll tell him not to do something, and he almost never does it. Like very rarely. He kind of concerned me because I'm like, are you really my child if you're this good? Because like he's gotten in trouble in his 6 years of life less than any single day of mine. So I'm like, what in the world? So And this is another reason why I'm a little bit tempered when it comes to the issue of spanking. I try not to judge too much. This one I think was over the top, so it's a little bit easier. But I've seen some go around where I'm like, I don't like what I'm seeing. However, like, did you ever see the issue? There was a video that went viral probably like 8 months ago, maybe 6 months ago, something like that. And it was a black woman that went to the school. That she got called up to the school, and her son was probably between 10 and 12, and somebody's videotaping it, and she had to leave work. She's yelling, cussing at him, swatting at him. The big thing there was that she was cussing at him a lot. And a lot of people are like, oh, she needs to have her child taken from her. And I don't know. I'm like, because I look at it and I go, I want a parent to be involved. I want a parent that will show up at the school if the school calls you, although that's not a good thing, but I want
Right.
you to be present there. I want you to be angry with your child. You don't have to be super angry, but I do want you to be a little angry and say, this is unacceptable. I should never have to be called from work to come and deal with your behavior in school. So for me, I was like, maybe rather than demanding that she lose her child, because I think the foster system and stuff like that has its own problems, maybe we work with each other to try to build better families in the first place and say, hey, like, you can't just go and start pointing your finger and saying, don't do that. But maybe if you start, having relationships with people, then you can speak to their lives and help influence them for the better. And that's not what I was seeing.
No, but that is very tough to do because now you are inserting yourself into another family's dynamic
Mhm.
of like telling them how to behave or what they're doing wrong, and that's a line I could we without getting into too much. We have these friends. There was an issue with the teacher and their child at school, and we never said anything. It turned out to be inappropriate. And now they're like, hey, why wasn't anybody telling us about this? And it's hard to tell. It's high school.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, even though you're my good friends, I'm going to just, say, hey, this looks a little, maybe I should have, I don't know. So anyway, that I think is a dynamic that's difficult. I think leading by example is one.
Mhm.
Having a church or community or your school. So was the one with the lady that she was coming to school because her child was in trouble? Is that what it was?
Yeah, he got in trouble. It wasn't clear what happened. There were like two teachers or whomever, faculty members. They were present, and then there was somebody videotaping. I don't know who was videotaping. And she wore his butt out. I think she was less physically aggressive in terms of the actual hitting than the mother we saw earlier, but she was definitely louder, more angry, and she used a lot more profanity.
Yeah.
Um,
So there's some of that where I'd have to see it where I'd be kind of like, well, then don't screw up at school or mom's going to go crazy in
right,
front of
right.
people.
And
So,
yeah,
get your
and
shit together.
when I say speak into other people's lives, so I used to do I used to be a youth director for the church. And one of the things that I observed is that a lot of people have the tendency to come in and just tell people something before they've even gotten to know you. And I'm like, that
Mm-hmm.
never, ever,
Yeah.
ever works.
No.
What's different is if you become somebody's actual real friend,
Yeah.
not becoming their friend so that you could speak to their lives, but you just say, you know what, maybe I'm going to help out. Maybe whatever, just something where you are adding a value to their lives from their perspective, either through friendship or like I did here in Jacksonville, where I mentored a kid. I just signed up through a local program and I went and mentored a kid. And then eventually that gave me access to speak to their lives a little bit, not a lot, just a little bit. Right. But first I had to be a value add to them in their eyes.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And that's what I mean. Like, if we would start doing more of that, and I say that because when I went and did the mentoring, they told me, they said, we need more men, because what they did was they would match men with boys, women with girls. And they said we have plenty of women, partially because boys were the larger in number, and then men were fewer in number. And so they're like, we could use more men. We don't have enough. And so I'm just like, I always try to encourage people, like, if you have the opportunity, get involved, because that's like, it's easy to get online and talk shit about somebody and say, well, they should lose their child. It's far much more work to go out and then, spend the labor to hopefully maybe be able to improve, help somebody's, improve their own life. That's where I'm coming from.
No, good point. And some of that is just like even the friends that you have now, right? It's sometimes you see them and you do whatever and then you go your way. It's like maybe there's a check-in, right? Hey, how you doing? That type of thing. And sometimes we think that we're friendly to them and we are the good friend. But you ever had, sometimes like someone doesn't talk to you and you're like, oh, why don't they like me or what? And maybe it's they're having a bad day, right? So we are very centric people on ourselves. So anyway, I'm trying to learn from that myself.
Gotcha. This is an interesting comment here. Another point: the fact this video went viral in a way proves that people know what's appropriate versus not. I think that's a great point. If we're looking at the law and we're saying, hey, how do we define appropriate? The viral nature of the video and the anger that people have online kind of give us. I think there's a term for like the community values or something like that, but basically community values in a sense. They help identify, where the community is. Now it's a little bit broader online because it could be all over the United States and who knows, Russia and India and wherever else all the bots are and whatever. But so there's some of that, but I think there's a point here. Do you kind of concur with this or?
Yeah, I do. And it just made me think of something else. The statute says use of force. And so then my thought and kind of the way that you're going here is think of like home defense or your defense of yourself, right? It's got to be proportional to what, the defense has to be proportional to what the other person is doing to you. Just like when you're saying, oh, I'm going to spank my child so he doesn't get killed in the street. Yeah, but you're not going to throw him over the couch and beat him, 22 times with a belt. That doesn't make sense. That's not appropriate. He didn't do his chores. Is this appropriate? Maybe if he's almost killing his brother with a knife, I don't know, maybe then, but it's not in proportion. And so when you think about all this and you're saying a reasonable standard, I think that's kind of how I would try to, if I'm in court arguing this, I would probably, this would be a great way to do it. Bring up the kid going into the street, chores, and how is this reasonable to stop him or to make him do his chores? Probably not.
And that was kind of where I'm going when I said I'm going to level set my expectations. So, like I'll tell you, hey, drawing on the wall, pretty normal. Every parent has experienced it pretty much, but throwing rocks at the dog's face, that's not normal. That's that's very out of the ordinary. And I would probably make some arguments that you've made some failures along the way that led to that, but conversation for a different day. In that moment, I would say that warrants a different response. Perhaps that's a situation where you do smack their hands or you do give them a swat or two on the butt. Swat or two, by the way, not like 22. That is just insane. So I think proportionality, even for those who believe in spanking, I think proportionality can help direct them to say, okay, maybe we're going a little too far with this. Let's dial it down, which hopefully would go toward appeasing the crowd that's, like, don't spank at all ever.
You're talking about the writing on the wall. It made me think, and this is like kind of the moment. It was all around this time where my disciplinary things changed. Divorced, had my own apartment, I think I was going to law school at the time. And I had my diploma from, so I was an engineer. That's what I got my undergrad in. So I had my diploma and it happened to be on this table that the kids had in their bedroom. And I came in there one day and I was shuffling through some things and I see this and my daughter had kind of written her name on there in crayon. And it was like all across this thing. It was just horrendous. And I immediately started to get mad. And then I'm like, I left this on their art table. What do you think you're doing? And then it's just a piece of paper. I got a new one. So that to me, and then we make jokes about it. And, it didn't mean that she then started drawing on everything, but I brought it to her attention. She's like, well, it wasn't me. It was my brother. But it had her name and he writes, so you call him out and yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because sometimes, I agree. Sometimes as a parent, you get mad and then you look back and you're like, yeah, maybe I was actually the one that's at fault there. Like, I left this on the table. I did something that quote unquote encouraged the child, which generally doesn't take a whole lot. They see something, they do something kind of a thing. So that's kind of funny. There was another comment here, kind of unrelated, but it's funny. Do y'all do Elf on the Shelf? Because I've seen kids more terrified of that than they are of being spanked. I don't think Elf on a Shelf was a thing when I was a kid. I don't remember it
No.
ever happening, so I don't think it was a thing. We don't do it because it just seems kind of
Cringe.
dumb. Seems kind of dumb to me. I'm just
Yeah,
like,
I'm totally with you. I'll give you a
I'm
hug right
lazy
now. I hate it.
because isn't the point of it you like secretly have to move it around?
Yeah.
And I'm too lazy for that. So I'm like,
Right.
you know, like I don't have time to go and check
Yeah.
on the elf.
Right.
So no, we don't do that.
No, we have some in-law or anyway, some people in our family that do that, and it was always annoying.
That's too
Yeah.
funny.
You know what we didn't talk about?
What
So teacher gets fired. Now this is a Christian school. I think it was appropriate to fire her. They said it was some sort of moral clause. I almost wonder if it wasn't even so much the beating on the child, but using the F-bomb on the video with this Christian school. If that's like, I mean, I think they had every reason to do so. You know, because you're like, are they going to get a lawsuit? Probably not in this case. But I was just mentioning, I went to a Christian, school growing up. Got spanked in third grade. I was a talker. This happened first grade. I'm pretty shy. Second grade, I start to make jokes, and the teacher. This is what teachers love to do. They call the student out and they embarrass them in front of all their friends. Right now, and I'm in second grade, and I remember this where I would say something back to the teacher, and then everyone would laugh, and I was like, "Oh, here we go." So by the third grade, I was never going out to recess. I was in trouble all the time because I would just talk back to the teachers, and then they spanked me. And then it happened in seventh grade as well. Which I thought they're going to make me run laps or something stupid, but they just hit me super hard. So anyway, I'm not a fan of that. Someone on Twitter had said, "What about hitting other people's children? It's one thing to hit your own."
Yeah, I did see that.
But what about hitting other people's children? Good luck.
Yeah, these days, I think when I was growing up, it was a little bit more acceptable. Generally, if you knew the parent, because I remember my mom would tell people, she was like, "Hey, if he's acting out of line, go ahead and give him a swat or something like that." And I went to, my mom told me that I think in elementary school, I went to a Catholic school, and this was back when they actually had the nuns in nun uniform. So I've been to one where when I was in elementary school, where they had the uniforms, and then in later years in a different state and city, I went to a junior high school that was Catholic, and they just wore normal clothing. But the one early on, she would show up and she would say, "Was Daniel," which is my legal name, she would say, "Was Daniel good today?" And she said they would just look at her, smile, and pat me on the head and say, "He was fine." And she's like, "I knew you weren't fine. They must have wore your ass out." Because they were allowed to spank.
Yeah.
Because
wrap your knuckles with a ruler and whatnot.
Yeah, I was constantly in trouble. Like I was, and I like you, I would talk back. Talk back was my big one. I still do that now. Like I trying to make a whole living off of it. Basically talking back to pretty much everybody. So
I had that. I got in trouble so much in fifth grade. I was my desk was right by the teachers against the chalkboard, and it just stayed there. And she was horrible. It was so bad. I knew sixth grade was going to be bad. My mom, I skipped sixth grade. I was able to do that. I just skipped into seventh, and then that was a new teacher. He couldn't control it, and I got spanked. They cut out a paddle with the desktop. And this is a grown ass man that comes in. Anyway, I don't need to. I'm traumatized, as you can tell by this. But
it's kind of weird. To my knowledge, I was not traumatized by any of the crap that happened to me.
I wasn't traumatized.
And like maybe it wasn't that bad. I don't know, or maybe I'm just crazy resilient, or maybe I'm just stubborn. I mean, I am a libertarian, so there's that.
Right.
I'll tell you a fun story. When I was in fifth grade, I wanted to go to gym class because we were going to play some game or something that I wanted to be involved in, but I had not done my health homework.
Oh boy.
And so the teacher in fifth grade was like, you're going to have to finish your homework. And then when you get it done, I'll let you go and join the rest of the class. So I know, like, I got to hurry because I'll miss, the longer I take, the more I miss. Being a smartass that I was, I only remember this one thing, and this truly happened. So part of it was like definitions. It would ask you like, what is this? And you would write a definition down, right? So it was like, what is a joint? like an elbow joint.
Yeah.
So I wrote down something you smoke.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
And my answers were just like that. Like there's a whole
Yeah.
bunch of answers like
You
that.
would have been a picture on Twitter with the, like look what my son did.
Yeah, yeah. And so I gave it, went to class, came back. She promptly took me outside. So the way that this school was set up is they had this huge area in the center, almost like a giant, it wasn't quite a cafeteria, but it was just like this giant area. And then along the walls in the corners, they would have the doors that went into the classrooms. And so she took me out, and then she proceeded to scream at me. And I mean, this woman screamed at me at the top of her lungs, just yelled at me something, made me cry. Right.
Oh
I
boy.
started crying. Okay. And I didn't really straighten up as a student. I just didn't do that thing anymore.
You're like, yeah.
That was my approach to life, like, oh, shouldn't do that one thing anymore. I'll do something different.
That's hilarious.
So, all right. Well, I think we've covered this. So the scoop is, hey, legally speaking, she could be in some serious amount of trouble. It's hard to say exactly what disruption to the family is going to occur long term, but there is a good chance that this woman will get her children back, probably under some supervised care for some amount of time. How long do they generally have supervised care?
So I'm going to, you can do bad stuff in California, as a matter of fact, and then like supervised visits if you're through a professional agency where you go there and see your kids there. It could be like 6 months, and then slowly and some of this just has to do with her ability to do the work that she needs to. Therapy, anger management. That's going to be, the criminal side is going to make her do some stuff. And if she's smart, she's going to just go ahead and start doing those things immediately. So yeah, I don't know, 6 months to a year, but she's going to have her kids back in less than that. I mean, to some extent,
Okay.
I will say this as a caveat. It depends what the kids say. If they're like, oh, you think this is bad. This is just what she got caught doing. Well, now she may, it may be problematic.
Right. If they're like, yeah, she smokes and puts them out on my skin or something like that. Yeah. That's going to be serious. Oh, and I meant to tap onto the conversation about the school. I agree that they have the right to fire her. Now, as libertarians, we tend to agree that you can fire, or you should be able to fire somebody for any reason or no reason whatsoever, however that plays out for you. But in this particular case, I would say that a strong reason to fire the woman is we don't want that reputation associated with us. Yeah. We are a Christian school, whether it's the spanking, hopefully part of it was the spanking. Hopefully they weren't just like, oh, that's spanking. Yeah, he probably deserved it. But man, that F word, he didn't. Like, hopefully they do a little bit better on the moral issue there than that. So we covered that. We covered just kind of like where our positions are on spanking. Pretty much not at all. My son is 6. I don't even think he could tell you when the last time he got any kind of physical punishment. These days, just a stern talking to him seems to be sufficient. It's funny. I'll talk to him and I'll say, well, should you do that? No. And I'll be like, what should daddy do? And then I'll just kind of stare at him blankly for like 30 seconds, just like a well-placed pause. And you could see him, his face is just welling up. I'm not like, I'm just kind of stoically looking at him, just quiet. And then you could just see him welling up. And I'm like, this seems sufficient. Like, I don't need to go any further. He seems to have the point. Plus, he also doesn't do it again generally. So
you make me, I'm sorry to keep going here, but without getting too much, my dad, I respected and not feared him, but, to the point where I didn't want him to come home and that I was in trouble. Like that scared, and because I was such a disappointment. Right. Right. You don't want that. My mom, I love that. Once again, I love her. I'm not making anything other than, and then she changed too. This was early on. And then, whatever happens in your life. And she kind of grew out of this too. It happens so much. You're just kind of like, okay, I don't know that there's almost a lack of respect towards her discipline, and it's just kind of like whatever. And so I think that what you're just saying here about your son and the way he's reacting, there's a respect in a sense that he has. It's his father. He should, but it's also like, you're not out of control. You're not an emotional person. I'm okay. And I think that the kids can sense those kind of things.
Yes.
They're smart, you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think kids, here's what I'll say, and maybe the anti-spanking people will hate me for this, but I think that if you are generally a good parent by just any generic measure that most people would agree is good, if you're generally a good parent, you try to show up to some of their events, you support them, you help them out with their homework, you're there for them when they got a scraped knee, you teach them how to ride a bicycle, those kind of things, right? You're what we would expect as a parent. I think kids are actually pretty resilient,
Oh
even if
yeah.
you do some things that maybe you shouldn't do. So like, this is why I say, like, for me, I look at it as, yes, my mom spanked me, but she was there for me for so many things
Yeah.
in a positive light that they far outweighed the spankings, even though I got one probably almost daily. So for a while.
Sounds like you deserved it. That's
Oh, I assure you, I was such a hellion. I was so bad. And I was actually so worried for my wife because I was like, if my kid turns out to be like me, like, I'm prepared for this. I don't know if I don't know how well I'll do, but I'm prepared at least that it might happen. She is definitely not prepared, but we lucked out. He is a total goody two shoe like my sister and my brother were. So they were the goody two shoes. I was a hellion for all three of us and then some. So, but yeah, it's funny. I think the respect really, like sometimes when my son will come up and be like, "Dad, are you proud of me?" And it's not like he's begging for it. He'll just, like, he's done something. He's like, "You proud of me, Dad?" I'm like, "Absolutely, son. I'm awesome." And then sometimes without even prompting, I'll just tell him, I'm like, "I'm really proud of you, son. Like, you did a good job with whatever this is." Right. And then, like, every morning I try to make sure without fail, I give him a kiss on his cheek or his head. And I say, be good at school, have fun, et cetera. Love you. You're a great kid. And I try to give him, a little, probably a little additional praise, like more than he actually has done something for specifically. And I feel that goes a long way, such that when it's time to discipline, you can be like, "I'm really disappointed in you," or you can just stare at them.
That's exactly what we had done with my son. Right, kind of like the unwarranted affection, just. And for me, it was a thing about being positive. So anyway, I don't need to get back into this, but yeah, you're doing that's wonderful. It's good to hear.
So, and just for the folks out there, I'm not talking about lavish praise. We're not just like,
Yeah.
like he picked his nose and we're like, "Wow, you're so awesome. You picked your
Yeah.
nose." No, we're not. It's not crazy. I mean, there's still a limit. And sometimes we're like, "Yeah, no, you can do better." Like with this schoolwork, we're like, "No. 75 is not cutting it, boy. You go back and start
Yeah.
over."
Yeah. There's something about I think it's confidence thing with kids. There's a balance. It's not like you're so much that they think that their shit doesn't stink, but
Right.
it's also about like I'm cared for, I'm loved, and I'm appreciated, and yeah, it's a nice warm feeling. So awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we've covered it all. We've covered out, how to better parent. So now anybody watching, they know from you and I how to be a better parent. Just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Good luck.
You're on your own journey.
Yeah.
So that's what I'll say about that. All right. So any final words, and then we'll just cut out of here.
No, I don't know why I put my email on the thing. I think I was doing something else, but
Snap, I didn't realize.
Yeah, no worry. You can find me on Twitter, Tyler Janke, Janke. Maybe put that in the links there. And it was really good being on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you'll, I was trying, yeah, there, I turned it off for you. So now people in the last few minutes won't send you emails. So, all right. So I'm going to put you backstage. If you got to go, that's fine. If you want to chit chat for a moment after.
I do, because we're going to go dog training. So
that's right.
I'll be in contact with you. I really appreciate it though. Love your stuff.
Sir. Thank you for coming on.
Yep.
Have a good one.
You too.
Bye. Right. All right, folks. Thank you for joining. Hope you found some inspiration, or maybe you found it informative. Let me know in the comments. Come back later, drop a comment in there. Let me know if we missed something. Let me know if I need to offer a correction, or if you just want to be, promiscuous with praise. Well, go ahead and do that too. I'm all ears for whatever you got. But for right now, I'm going to head out. I will be back Monday morning with a fresh, brand new bill review. And then I will be, that's 7:30 in the morning for anybody, because I know I don't normally run this show in the evening. So 7:30 Monday morning. In fact, 7:30 weekday mornings, except for next week. I'm only going to be streaming Monday, Tuesday, and then I will be out Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for Thanksgiving, and then got some good new cool stuff coming up in December. So look forward to that. But with that, I'm out. Have a good one. You know that I'm all about supporting organizations that hold my values. Make sure you head on over to blackgunsmatter.shop. They've got apparel, stickers, and more. Use the code LibertyDad, all one word, at checkout to score a 10% discount. Or just hit the referral link in the show notes. That'll make it so much easier. Remember, I'm not just a voice on a mic. I'm a dad who's working hard to deliver to you the best libertarian content. Connect with me on Linktree, where you'll find links to my Patreon and buy me a coffee, because every bit helps keep this show rolling. Plus, you can find me on my other platforms to stay in the loop. With your help, this show, The Message of Liberty, will be seen and heard by more people. As always, I appreciate you tuning in and look forward to seeing you in the next episode.